That's exactly what Polymet plans.
Last fall, demonstrators pressured Minnesota's St. Louis County Board to publicly acknowledge a proposed copper-nickel sulfide mine would threaten the health of their local watershed.
Mining is less than 1% of Minnesota's economy. Does it make sense for us to allow Polymet to open up their sulfide mining operation and destroy or isolate over 1,000 acres of wetlands for an industry that contributes so little to our economic well-being?
This river has been designated as one of the top 10 most endangered rivers in the United States. That's not a good thing.
Opponents allege newly unearthed sulfur-bearing rock will create acid mine drainage, diluting previous efforts to restore the St. Louis River, a waterway once crippled by iron ore pollution.
Those are established. Essentially, the landscape has been damaged already. They're slowly coming up to speed with their permits, but they're getting there. This sulfide mining is a whole new thing.
Since 2008, applications to conduct exploratory drilling have surged in the land of 10,000 lakes. And Toronto, Canada-based Polymet Mining Corporation is first in line to unlock precious metals from the Duluth complex, a vast mineral deposit in the Arrowhead of Minnesota. Mining proponents say geologists have known about the formation for over 60 years, but new technology has eliminated barriers to excavation of 4 billion tons of raw material, worth an estimated $1 trillion.
Because we're using a legacy site, we'll actually be able to clean up some of the issues that are currently going on and bring modern technology to the process.
Corporate officials say any water released from their proposed NorthMet site will be treated to meet state and federal guidelines. But for some, the mining industry's past practices fan the flames of skepticism. Environmental regulations didn't exist when Minnesota broke ground on iron ore mines 130 years ago. And while time has offered the benefit of a more enlightened geological approach, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, which monitors mining, was only created in 1970. A well-established hub for agriculture, forestry, and mining exports, the Port of Duluth sits between the contested estuary and Lake Superior. Taconite, a finite resource used to make steel, is mined exclusively in the state's Mesabi Iron Range. Ships from North America's furthest inland port have traditionally transported the commodity to mills around the Great Lakes Rust Belt and the world. In decades past, however, 2 nearby locations became so polluted they qualified for EPA's SUPERFUND program. As corporate and taxpayer-funded cleanup continues, some stakeholders fear relapse.
It's been proven that we can meet water quality standards, both surface and groundwater, here at the site. If we can't show that through environmental review and permitting, we won't get a permit to operate.
Polymet expects to produce 3.6 billion pounds of copper equivalent over 20 years. At 32,000 tons of ore per day, that's a fraction of the 100,000 tons of taconite that once rolled through daily. But the bounty on precious metals far outweighs that of low-grade ores, while its leftovers raise red flags to critics.
This is an example of taconite tailings. Our tailings will look very similar, where the copper, nickel, platinum, palladium, gold metals have been recovered, and basically washed sand is what's left.
During a decade-long process, Polymet has jumped through various state and federal hoops, described as the most stringent in the world. Project backers say copper and nickel, chief components in cell phones, hybrid car batteries, solar panels, and wind turbines, are essential building blocks for a high-tech, clean energy future. A future some say the U.S. should secure now, before less climate-minded competitors, like China, are allowed to dominate the market.
Minnesota's laws are the strictest in the country when it comes to the environment, and plus we live here. You know, we live here, we play here, we drink the water, we breathe the air. We want this to be done right, and it will be done right.
A portion of Minnesota's taconite production tax funds the Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation Board, an economic development agency charged with diversifying northeastern Minnesota's economy. In its early years, the board was instrumental in taconite's rise as an alternative to depleted natural ores. Current members view copper-nickel mines as a natural progression, and Polymet predicts roughly 1,000 direct and indirect jobs would result from its project. A forecast welcomed with open arms by some in a region sapped by economic slump.
My main focus is making sure that the wild rice is protected. And we need to understand that without water, there will be no life, including human life.
Adding to layers of complexity, the North Met mine sits within territory ceded to the government by Native Americans. In 1854, the Lake Superior Chippewa entered into a treaty giving the U.S. ownership of their lands in exchange for hunting, fishing, and wild rice harvest rights in perpetuity. Wild rice is sacred to area tribes and protected by law. Minnesota is the only state in the nation with regulations in place to limit the amount of sulfate, another mining byproduct, in waters where the caviar of grains is grown. Polymet is confident it will meet standards for wild rice, but ultimate approval of the North Met mine rests with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and a decision is expected soon.
You worry about the water, you worry about the rice, but you also worry about the jobs in the industries, and there has to be some kind of happy medium there.
The Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior Chippewa says 2015's final environmental impact statement is flawed. The tribe conducted inquiries of its own, which they say contradict state and federal findings. And while critical of the North Met project, officially, the Fond du Lac Band does not oppose regulation-driven mining aimed at reducing environmental damage to the maximum extent possible.
There's a lot of misinformation on our project. It's easy to have sound bites in opposition, but it takes a long time to be able to explain exactly what we are and what we aren't doing.
Even though various national authorities have given the go-ahead, those opposed say corporate profits and tax revenues are the only thing Polymet will dig up.
Protect, don't pollute. Protect.
And the battle over risks and benefits will likely continue as rivals work their way through the scrutiny of precious metals development up north.
That's what we want for our St. Louis River.
For Market to Market, I'm Josh Bittner.